welcome to Saturday Impact right here at Christ the Rock Community Church. On behalf of Pastor Darrell and Christ the Rock, we are so glad that you are joining us today. We are going to continue in a conversation that we started on last week as we speak to educators, parents, and students about how are we navigating through the circumstances, through everything that we're facing and this current pandemic, as well as the social crisis, as well as the political climate, everything that how our world is changing, and yet we are having to live in the midst of it and adjust. So before we go into our conversation, I want to pray, and then I will introduce our guest again today. Father, we thank you so much for this day. Thank you that we are in this moment allowed to share what you have given to these three panelists today, these three educators, this a mom and an auntie and a daughter, just different perspectives as educators and how they're living in their lives that will impact our listeners today. We pray that you would empower them, that people who are tuning in would be impacted, would be empowered to change and live out the purpose that you have for them. Thank you again for this opportunity. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So I want to introduce again, in case this is your first time joining us, meet Cynthia Acevedo. Cynthia is our shift director here at Christ the Rock Community Church. She was a teacher in the school system for several years, over 20 years, right? And she started working here about 4 or 5 years ago. So she brings her perspective, as well as Melissa Bravo, who is our leader now in our KOR ministry and was in the school system for several years and still student teaching. And she brings a perspective as a mom, a teacher, and an educator. And then we have from Memphis, Tennessee, Portia Owens, and you can tell by the last name. She is my sister-in-law, Pastor Darrell's sister, and she is an educator as well as she trains teachers, and she provides curriculum and everything to empower teachers to effectively do their job. So we're going to jump right in and continue a conversation, and we left off on last week talking about schools reopening. Kids going back to school, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And how our children, not only did they grow, because I've seen some kids via Zoom and their whole appearance has changed. They changed in appearance, but they have changed in how they see the world. So I want you to start off by saying what might be some of the challenges for those students interacting in relationships, going back to school, how they see the world. How is that going to impact their learning? You want to start, Melissa?
Yeah, so definitely, COVID started March. After COVID, we had the whole racial issue and the rioting going on. And now, as we're reopening up school, the whole mask, no mask issue is coming up. Now we have elections coming up. I really feel like the kids are just, even from March, they have, like you said, grown and been impacted. And at least what I'm seeing is that there is a shift in students where, the quiet students are no longer quiet, and the students that were like, the class clown, or they were like boisterous and they were like, out there, they're the quiet ones now. So it's like, there's like this whole shift. And even in my kids, in my personal kids, I see that they almost like had to grow up super fast and become, almost like somebody that they're not, or just being, like a lot of TikTokers are out there, the kids are all over TikTok, and they're seeing different perspectives, and they're hearing what I have to say, and they're hearing what's the TV showing. So it's like, it's just, the world has just changed so much for our poor kids. And then now with the school opening up, we're gonna have, again, almost like a division. I hate to say it like that, but it almost seems like that, like where some students will say, hey, I'm in class, and why are you at home? And then some students that are home, like, oh, well, why are you in school? That's dangerous. Like, it's almost, and I hate to bring this up, but it's like the parents, like we have to be very cautious, and me especially as a mom, we have to be very cautious what we say and how we say it, and our feelings about certain issues that are going to be arising, because your kids feed off of that, and they're listening even when you think that they're not. So, even if you have like a negative thought, especially with the distance learning that came up, I had to be very cautious of my own personal feelings and how I felt about, the schools closing up or trying to reopen. I have to keep that to myself and almost like make it seem like whatever we decide, first we're going to bring that to prayer because, we are a faith-filled family. So, we bring things to prayer and we let our kids know, but, we also purposely keep things from them because we don't want whatever we feel, whatever my feeling is, to negatively impact them.
That's good. Very good. Cynthia, what about you?
I think with our students, you can see a change in how they connect through Zoom. And like Melissa was talking about how the normally talkative students are all of a sudden quiet. That was a shock to me. That's something I'm still trying to figure out what's happening to their personality because they're not as talkative as they normally are when we're face to face before COVID. So, it's just them adjusting. I think it's a difficult season for them to still adjust to connecting with their leaders and peers through a computer screen. And I think for parents, I know a lot of parents are afraid. I've been recently talking to some parents, and the majority of the ones that I've been talking to don't want their child back in the school, and they're optioning for that to remain virtual the rest of the year. And I sometimes wonder how their student is going to deal with that because, like what Melissa was saying, the ones that get to go to school, and so when they're hearing all their friends are hanging out at school, in a safe way, I'm sure, but there might be that struggle of mom, dad, why can't I do the same? Why do I have to remain home? So I think parents are going to be challenged in a new way in a couple of weeks because they're going to have to um, deal with, having a heart to heart as to why they're not going to school this year and they're going to remain virtual, and encouraging them and being creative in the sense of how are you going to allow your child to connect with peers when they can't do it through school, and just finding creative ways of getting that connection with their child and their peers. Because for our students, I know that face to face is so important, because I remember talking to a shift student, telling her about the Bible study, and we're just talking to her how great it's going to be, and then she's like, yeah, and then when she goes, we're going to be doing it here, right? And I was like, no. And she's like, oh, forget it then. Forget it. She just shut it down because she's like, I need to see people's faces. I need to see people. So that is such a difficult issue with our students, that they need to have that face-to-face time. And when they find out some of their peers get to do it and they're still not doing it, that's going to be a challenge. And then just parents dealing with their student might be afraid. I know that when the COVID started, we had a student that didn't even want to come into the sanctuary, couldn't even make it past the parking lot because she looked around the parking lot and saw people walking out with masks on, and it just overwhelmed her. And you can tell, like, something beautiful that Portia said earlier about teachers having their emotions be validated. I think parents be open to validate your students' feelings, because they might not be sharing everything that they're experiencing inside, the emotional turmoil that they have going through, everything that they're facing in this pandemic. So I think it's important to have those heart-to-heart talks like Melissa says she does with her family. I think it's just important that parents do that. Have those heart-to-heart talks, especially if your child is going to go back. You have those that don't want them to go back, and the ones that are. How do you prepare your child emotionally to deal with going back into an environment where they have to still, be safe, and using wisdom, but also, letting them know how important it is to connect, and encouraging them to remain connected to their youth, to their peers as well.
That's good. Portia, now help us out. You have to tell you, as one who instructs teachers, you're talking to teachers. I'm sure some of them are parents. So what would you say to our audience today in light of that? What kind of tips would you give?
Yeah. Well, um, gosh, it's really hard. Kids want to see each other. They miss us as teachers. They miss their extracurricular activities. I mean, this is just a really, really challenging time, and I think I'm sorry, I think Cynthia just hit the nail on the head. Like, validate what they said, and like, okay, so how can we, like, how do we connect with each other? I can speak about a friend group that I have at work. We were used to hanging out after work, before work, like over lunch, and that didn't happen. So, of course, that's not happening now. So we will like schedule Zoom calls where we'll meet together, like after work or like during lunch, and we can just like talk, or even just a phone call, like over the phone, where at least I get to hear your voice. So, I think it's important that, like what's been said, like kids have a space to talk and share, like, this is what I need right now. And before we, like, really, is like leaders, educators, parents, like, deeply consider, all right, this is what you need. How can we, like, what can we do about that? I mean, social media can be a really great place for kids to connect safely, when it's done well. And then there are also like lots of strategies and like organizations who are already aware that kids wants, so they're like adapting their systems and things just to build connections. I'm thinking about, for example, House Party. I mean, that app has blown up since the pandemic, and it's just like a group chat. And like you get to play games and things like that, and also like Marco Polo. I mean, I'm definitely not promoting any of these apps like for pay or anything. These are just apps and things that I've had to add to my world, because I miss that connection, and that's something that like kids can do as well. I was talking with an educator and a mom friend of mine, and she said that her kids, she chose to keep her kids at home, and then they have friends who were allowed to go into the classroom. So during lunch, she asked the teacher, I don't know how it was set up, but basically during lunch, they Zoom call. So the girls, she has two girls, and they're at home, and then there's a few kids, and they still have their meal at lunch because they're still in the same class, but it's just a Zoom call. I mean, how amazing is it that, for 30 minutes or for however long, somebody's telling you that you don't, somebody's not telling you that you have to be on mute, right? So, and I know like that has to happen, in the classroom setting, but like those social times, like kids love that. They eat that up. So, I mean, not to sound redundant, but, I think Cynthia said it. Let's just like listen, hear them, and then like let's figure out how to make it work, how to make it happen.
Okay, so you said something I want, that triggered a thought in my mind about the find the social times. So as we were talking about the kids that, got to stay at home, and we hear kids who say, I want to go back to school, and then their parents will say, no, you're staying home. And then you got the kids that are going back, and my friends at school, but I'm at home. That is real, and that will bring up some type of emotion. It's kind of like when we were growing up. I'm quite sure y'all can remember. Portia, you might still be too young, but no, I'm sure you can relate to this too. You want to go somewhere, and your friend is going, and your mother or your father tells you, well, you can't go. And you're like, but it's okay, but it's safe, but you coming up with all the reasons because you really want to go. We know how that made us feel, right? So having been in the house all of these months, and then Melissa is my buddy, but Melissa gets to go to school and I don't. I love what you said, Portia. Find a way of that social time to bring me into that moment. So if it's a lunch break or whatever, then I can zoom in and she's in the lunch room or she's at that. I feel like I'm not left out of everything. So that's the first tip we're gonna say to you is find a way to where your child doesn't feel like they're completely left out. Whatever your decision is, going back to the classroom or remaining at home virtually, find a way for your child to still connect. Now let's talk, Portia and all of you, about the child who was super talkative and the child now that has shut down. Cynthia, you said you want to know what happened. Mm-hmm. So we're not psychologists. We do not know what happened. But let's just, if you're at home and you got parents, just put in that chat, in that comment section, what do you think? What do you see in your child that has changed during COVID? Because whatever, if that child goes back to the classroom or the child remains at home, that is a part of who they are. That is a part of their person and their personality now. So What are teachers going to have to adjust to? What are educators going to have to adjust to in order to teach in this climate?
Um, a lot, all the things. um, uh, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say really. You ask like what teachers are going to have to adjust to. Yeah, kids are, I mean, they're all over the place. We are all over the place. Um, and it doesn't feel comfortable. They're learning about themselves. I think it's helpful to create space for kids to share those kinds of thoughts and feelings and even what they want, even in a classroom setting. Like um, you just gave the example of a child wanting to uh, volunteer and record for church just to get out of the house. I mean, that's real. Sometimes kids can actually name, hey, this is what I need right now. So I think also like teachers have to just like remember that like kids are going through this too. So let's fast forward a year from now. Everything is back to normal or more normal than it is right now. But I mean, this is like, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but this is like group trauma that we're all experiencing. So we gotta, um, and and that means that we're gonna be feeling. There's some like implications that we're gonna be feeling for a while now. So we have to be gracious with ourselves. We have to be gracious with our kids. I mean, it's a tough. I mean, there's no, for me, there's no like real answer to that. I think it's also helpful um, if, as educators, we can like prepare ourselves. Like I said, there are lots of like um, authors and things who are responding to the needs of our kids and like creating webinars and podcasts and book series and things just to help our like help educators, help parents, and also help kids just to deal. I mean, telehealth is a real thing for people who need that kind of support, and it's okay. I mean, we all do, in my opinion. So um, I feel like when we can kind of dismiss the idea of like this is what it used to be, or maybe not dwell on that so much, but just kind of spend more of our energy thinking about like, so what now and like what's still left, like really thinking about um, thinking more like forward thinking, then I think that'll just be helpful and it'll also create that sense of hope that we all need right now.
Okay, you said some good stuff, and so wherever you want, you're really good, right? So I caught on to don't dwell on what it used to be. So we're going to say that to you. Don't dwell on what it used to be. I think all of us need to learn. That's the tip we'll give you. Don't dwell on what it used to be, and your kid is going to have to not dwell on what it used to be, right? The parents, the educators, all of us, we can't dwell on what it used to be. Portia, you mentioned telehealth. You know, like we've all had group trauma, and we talked about that in the panel that we did months ago with psychologists and social workers and parents. Telehealth, because we've had this group trauma, telehealth is one. And I remember you just said something, Portia, just even the way we see things. I had to have a telehealth doctor's appointment, and I'm going to be honest, the telehealth doctor's appointment was at 10 a.m., right? So I log on, it's the video, and honestly, I'm getting agitated because it's 10:07 and the doctor isn't on yet. And do you know the first thing that came out of my mouth? My goodness, it's telehealth. Why is he late? Right? But we were accustomed to going to the doctor's office and they're running behind. But I felt like since telehealth, he should have been on time. You know, it's that adjustment. So I found myself impatient and I had to say, okay, Tara, just relax. Just relax. You know, it's that thing we have had to transition in so many, many ways. So that caught my attention. And then when you said about, you were talking about the adjustment that we have, and it's like, I don't know. We don't have all the answers. And I saw a teacher yesterday and about the kids going back to school, and we were having that conversation. She said, Tara, everybody needs to be sensitive to this. There are some kids who don't mind being at home that we would say, you should be happy you can be at home in your PJs behind a screen, and you can have your breakfast on the side and your snacks, the convenience. She said, for every kid, that is not a convenience. It's not. They're at home with multiple people in their homes. It's loud, it's crowded, and school is a release for them. It's a getaway. That struck me in a deep way. And we know even for parents who have to adjust, who work, who are saying, I have to go to work. I have to leave my kid at home by themselves as a teenager. So they're calling back and forth all day to make sure they're okay or check on them. I think we need to think about that as well. And then all of us, we mentioned it earlier when we talked just in chatting about the lady on Facebook, the parent who, it's comical. Some of you may have seen it, but it's a lady who is acting out all of these things, and she's praying and saying, God, I've never been a math teacher before. Now I'm a math teacher. My grocery bill is super high because this child, all they do is go to the refrigerator. You know, if you've seen that, it is hilarious, but it's true. Then I saw on the news this morning that they were speaking about the airline layoffs, that we won't see a normal spike like regular airline travel until 2024. This is very real. We are forever changed. And so as we give these tips, we're not saying we have the answer. We're just trying to think through as educators, as people who are engaged with children, what will their lives be like, and how can we empower them? How can we empower you? So, Melissa, go ahead. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, if I'm gonna just come back to like what you guys were talking about, and we don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but what I have been thinking about, and this has been since August, with the whole shift in changing of the characteristics of the students, and even as the teachers, because right now I'm doing student teach, and I even see the teachers are teaching differently. And I think, because as I'm thinking about this, I think what's going on, and I shared this earlier with Cynthia, is that now we have this video on us that we didn't have that before. So if you think about pre-COVID, or even if you go back to like where you grew up and you were going to elementary school, nobody ever thought like, oh wow, that teacher had a really amazing lesson plan. No, it was like, okay, we made fun of the teacher, we made fun of, the kids, we had our little cliques going on. It was all about friends. And it was all about passing notes to each other. How are we gonna like sneak and cheat on this test? And it was like, even this morning I was doing my student teach, and the sixth graders were taking a quiz, and I'm like, man, that must really be bad for them. Like they can't even like try to pass a note or cheat or like, make a fun of somebody or make fun of the teacher or whatever. And I'm like, that, I think that's what it is. It's that, and for the teacher as well, like the teacher, me being a teacher, I get nervous. I get nervous on every Sunday when I do my Zoom live, and a lot of people who are around me know that, and they're like, why are you nervous? I'm like, well, now I have the video on me. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can't make a mistake. I feel like I can't be myself. Like people are actually like watching, and I know that the parents are watching me, and vice versa. Like the student who's now quiet, they're probably like, well, my mom's listening on me, and they probably said something at first and then they got reprimanded type of thing. So it's like you have this video on you all the time. Like you have to be quote unquote perfect. Your hair got to be nice. You got to make sure you're saying the right things. You got to make sure, especially now, with all the racial issues going up, as a teacher, you got to be very careful. Although we were careful before, but now we have parents at home listening to us, to our lesson. So like, what about if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching online right now and I say something and the parent gets offended? So and they can come onto the video right then and there. I've heard of cases that has happened. So it's the same thing is happening with the students. So, I mean, I'm not teaching this year per se, but for me, I think what would help is for us to just kind of just relax, like kind of be yourself, like it's okay to have like a cup of coffee if I'm teaching, which I would have done in the real world. But now if I'm teaching, I don't know if I would do that, because then what would the parents say? Oh, look at this teacher having her coffee as she's
Really?
teaching.
Okay.
You know, so it's like stuff like that. I would always have snacks, or I would joke with the students. I would be very interactive with them. But now it's like, I feel like, okay, well, for one, what I've noticed is that you only have a selected amount of time. So everything's rush, rush, rush.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have that time. Like, I used to have an AM and PM class where I used to have my AM from 8 to like 11:30. Okay, we got all those hours to just do one lesson. We would do group time, we would do interactive. I would sit down, I would give them a snack, because some students unfortunately would come to school and they wouldn't eat. So I would be that connection for them. They don't have that anymore. That's it. Like you said, the world has changed. So I really feel that's what's going on. I'm maybe hitting all of it and maybe not, you know, understanding all of it, but as far as what can we do about it, the only thing I can think about is, you know, just trying to forget about the fact that I have a camera on me and just be there for them right now. And them feeling that, like, I feel like it comes from just the teacher and the parents. Like, as a parent, I have to remember that when my kid is on, because you know, there was an instance with one of my kids, I'm not going to say which one, but they gave a wrong answer when the teacher asked them something. And I was in my room, I was like, how come this child doesn't know the answer to that? Like, what? And I went out there and I just like reprimanded, and I was like, and that's where, you know, my husband had to self-check, like, okay, you need to stop being the helicopter mom and just go into the room and let them just be wrong. It's okay, you know, it's okay for your child to give a wrong response. It's okay for your child to say something goofy. Like, I have to also remember that, like, that's part of who they are. You know, like, don't try to like make them perfect and try to fix everything. And it's the teacher too, you know, the teacher who's teaching, don't try to be so perfect and make the lesson plan so interactive, and you're like stressing all week about how am I going to do this and how am I going to deliver that, and I have to get online and I have to do this and that. It's like relax, give your lesson, be there for them, be the mom you can be. At least for me, I'm speaking on just myself, because being a teacher and being the KOR leader and giving those life lessons and doing the student teach and being the mom at the same time, I have to like kind of, you know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to reach my kids and my students at the same time? You know, and I think the key is, and this is what I've been self-checking on myself, is just to be myself.
I like that. I like you said relax. So that's another tip. Relax, you know, because we talked about that check-in with yourself. So that's good though, relax. I think that's something, you know, I'm sure you'd agree, Portia, that you would tell educators, relax, because I love when you said you don't have all the answers. We really don't. So we have to relax. And it's like we're in some ways we're a baby learning to walk. Because we're learning this, right?
Absolutely. I love that idea of relax. Like, you, me, everybody, just calm down. I just did a really great visual when you said that earlier, Melissa. Um, I'm also helping, I'm supporting my nephew. He's in first grade. With his distance learning, I dare not say that I'm teaching him. She's definitely teaching him. I'm just supporting. And I, your comment, Melissa, reminded me a couple weeks ago, they were signing off and she says goodbye to each of the kids individually, and then they log out. And one parent interjected and she said, you know, I just want to tell you, Colin, you did a great job today. And I noticed when I heard that, I looked over at his little device and I just noticed like her shoulders laid down. And she said, thank you. I mean, she lit up. So I guess if I can add another tip, I think encouraging each other, like really, you would be surprised at who needs to hear great job or it'll be okay today. You just wouldn't be surprised. And I thought, well, that was a really beautiful moment that I'm glad that the teacher, that the parent took to encourage that teacher. Because otherwise, I mean, would she have had that opportunity to share that? Maybe, maybe not if we were in person. So that inspired me. I said, man, I need to do a lot more, just encouraging people for no reason. That's just, that was a major point that I just learned and I wanted to share.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so we got relax, and we'll take it to, I'm going to connect another word onto that is encourage. Everyone needs encouragement. I talked to Melissa, I talked to Cynthia here, and I remember a conversation with you one time, Cynthia, and we were going through some of the things. And she said, "I just feel like I'm not doing anything right." I was like, "No, you are. You are." And she was like needing to be encouraged. I know it's hard during this time, to get young people to engage. And so everybody needs encouragement. We all do. And talking to the camera, it's different as a teacher when I'm in Bible study with the women. I know, Melissa, some of you all laugh at me because I'm looking at myself in the camera, but I'm teaching like I'm actually in the sanctuary with everybody because that's what I'm accustomed to. So my hands are frailing up and, my voice is changing. But it's weird because I feel like I'm just in the kitchen screaming, or I'm just in the kitchen super excited by myself, and I'm like, let a pot shout hallelujah, or I'm saying I'm saying to the ladies because they're on mute, just shout hallelujah right where you are. I wish I could hear you. You just say praise God, and I can't, and so it's like relax, just be in that moment, and it's okay where we are. When both of you, when you were speaking, I was thinking about when, I talked about when church started, when COVID started and no one was here. And we would sing, and there was no one to say, "Hey, I enjoyed that worship today," because that encourages us. So we would just kind of look at one another after church was over and go, "Okay, bye." And now since we're back, and there are people here, it's still the challenge of now we can't hear them sing with us. The face mask we were terrified the first week because we're looking at masks. So now we're having to really say to ourselves, hey, relax. Just relax. Just do what you always do. Lead worship, sing, praise God, relax. And we encourage one another. That was good today. Let's keep going. So I love that. Relax, encourage. So the next phase I want to go to as we just start to get closer to wrapping this up is structure. Because as you've spoken about that, I thought about structure. I love it, Melissa. Your husband said, you just need to not be in the room. Let your children do school. I think one of the challenges that we all have been faced with COVID, and I want each of you to speak to that, is structure. There are some people who live very structured lives, and then there are some who do not. But I think for me, honestly, it showed me where I needed to put in more structure, places where I needed to adjust. And I know one of the things I've heard all of you in just my conversations with you is that you encourage people to have a place for their kid that's their own place. You've made it, like you've freshened it up. Whether it's just a new poster board on the wall or something. So can you speak in your own way to right now and give parents some tips and educators some tips on structure and changing it? And when you go there, I want you to think about the fact that we spoke about this with the whole structure. Our kids are also challenged with this whole thing of structure. They are so accustomed to being on devices all the time. So that having to do distance learning is more of a challenge to them. So perhaps structuring less time on some of the devices. Who wants to start?
I guess I'll start. So I'll speak as a parent because I know we have two educators here. So as a parent, structure, from the very beginning, from the moment that they were born, you have to get the child on a schedule. And so part of the schedule for COVID or distance learning looks very much different. Mind you, you're in a square, like that's all you get is like this, and you got about just like mid-torso. So at least for my kids, I noticed that they're sitting a lot and like a little bit movement here, a little bit movement there, and they're out of frame. So it's like you have to be like a statue. It's not like you're in the classroom where you can kind of like move or get up as you please. Like before you get up, you have to like, oh, can I please use the bathroom? And then you go out of frame or what have you. So I think that a lot of getting up is really important. And I know that at least from one of my kids' schools, like the school is so strict, like keep your cameras on, blah, blah, blah. But I do want to encourage at least some of the teachers and some of the parents, ask your principal. hey, is it okay if my kids get up and kind of have like a brain break? We used to have brain breaks, like, pre-COVID in the classroom. So like, get up, stretch, do a little exercise, do a little bit of something, ask the principal if that can be done. And then as a parent, ask the teacher, hey, can my child do this? Can we get up and just kind of like stretch? Can we like, do a little bit of exercise, something to kind of get out of that? But to go back to the structure, I think that's very important, because without structures, there's chaos. So getting, like, I have my kids, trying to teach them to get up on their own with their own alarm clock is very important. Having that designated area where it's quiet. I have to also be very cautious when I'm at home and they're online. That I'm not washing dishes, that I'm not on the phone having conversations. If I do have to pick up the phone, I usually go outside. And I usually wait and do the dishes like in between classes or when they're off, just because I have to be very mindful as well, like, there's that background noise. And I always try to make it as quiet as I can for them, because I want them to be able to concentrate. I also did give, like, my son, for instance, he has the headphones, so it has like a noise cancellation, and that's only for breakfast time, where if I'm making breakfast or something, that's the only time that I'll make the noise. But other than that, I try to, go to my room, or I'll go to another area in the house where I know that he's not going to be distracted by the smell or the noises that are going on around him. Yeah, so I think definitely if you have like that area, I know a lot of parents do, but I bought both of my kids like a whiteboard and a cork board where they can kind of pin notes up and write like their schedule down. And I know there's an A day or B day for middle school and high school students, and so I have them write down A day, B day, write down even important fun things like, hey, we're gonna go to your cousin's house next weekend. Write that down on your calendar. Like, you have to write birthdays, exciting days. This, like, it's very important for them to actually visualize and see that calendar and see what's coming up, so that gives them something to look forward to, almost.
I like that. That's good. What about you, Cynthia?
I think it reminds me back in the classroom, and I used to have the schedule up, like she was saying, so they knew. And students need routine. All kids need routine, from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. They need routine, they need that structure. So it's important to keep the same routine going, so it becomes a habit for them of how their day is going to look. And they know what time is the brain break. They know what time they're going to get their snack. They know what time they have to prepare their homework lessons and stuff. And I think structure is also important for parents to be aware of, providing that environment of structure. But that also includes, what I'm noticing is a pattern with some of our parents not remembering that not only do students need structure during the virtual learning time, but they also need structure on how much time do I need to spend on homework assignments. Because what's happening to some of our students is they're locked up in the room for hours. Some parents don't even see them all day long because they're on their lessons with their teachers doing virtual learning, and then they're spending hours upon hours doing homework assignments. And I'm not trying to negate the necessity of education. Education is so vital, but I think that a lot of parents need to remember the spiritual perspective of how to allow your student to join a Zoom study, because that portion of their life is important. Because what's happening is that when I'm speaking to some parents and I'm trying to encourage them to participate, have your student participate, we have a wonderful Bible study, or we have a game night and we're baking and we're doing all these fun activities, and your kids need that break. But then I hear a lot of, oh, but my child needs to do these assignments and they're constantly doing these papers and preparing for these tests. And I think structure is so important, to not allow your kid to spend so much time away from what's also necessary, which is the spiritual part. And not just that, but the connection with the family. Because a lot of times students can use it as a way to escape connecting with their mom, connecting with their dad, connecting with their siblings, and they can spend all time on homework assignments and not remember, hey, mom is out there waiting for your dad, auntie, grandma, your little brother, your sister. They want engagement too with you. So I think it's important that structure includes the virtual learning of the day. It also includes the spiritual aspect, having time to do church activities through Zoom, but also family time and having that time to connect with family. All of that comes into the umbrella of structure.
I love that. That's good. What about you, Portia? to speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. Structure is a big one. As I just said, I'm working with my nephew every day, so we're buddies every day. It's kind of cool. He normally sits right here. Um, and it's cool for me because I get to teach again. I miss teaching. But when he first came, like when we first started this process, I felt super overwhelmed, almost to the point where I was gonna try to figure out another thing to do with him, just because I didn't want to. I needed to do my work, but I also wanted him to get like the most out of this. This is his only first grade experience, right? So I had to like tap into like what I would do if I were a teacher or actually in the classroom. And so we created a morning routine. I'm the type, I really like a smooth morning. I feel like nobody wants to wake up in chaos. And if I could avoid that, I could. So we have has a list of like 6 chores he does to get ready for his day. And I have a list too. And we say good morning and then we get to work. So just starting our day off, and also me knowing that, all right, if he gets a smooth start, then when my meetings start coming up, then I mean he's already set, ready to go, and so we can like use some sign language to communicate. But having that morning structure for me was huge. Just and also me sharing with him, hey, when I'm on a call, I have my headphones. So if it's not a real emergency, I trust that you're a problem solver, so you can figure it out. Because I want to empower him, and I hope that like if this were back last year, his teacher would have empowered him to say, "Hey, you don't need me for everything. Use your brain. Your computer, I mean, your tablet is about to die. What can you do about that?" So those are things that like teachers would do anytime, and then I had to remember those when he came on. I thought now kind of going back into like what has already been shared, y'all shared so many wonderful tips and advice about structure. I think more advice I would give to parents, particularly, and even educators, is just like ask kids, hey, what worked today? What didn't work today? I mean, believe them. Mom, I was really bored. Yeah, I can see that. Like, Zoom fatigue is a real problem. I mean, we're all experiencing that. Ask them like, what can work better? I have a coworker whose child, she learned through working from home. I think he's in 3rd grade. She learned that he actually works better sitting under the table. That sounds really
Oh,
crazy,
wow.
but no, I don't want to say crazy. But forgive me for saying crazy. But it's different,
It
and she
works.
would not have known that had he had she not asked him and just observed him. So I really think like asking kids, empowering them, hey, you have a voice. Say what you need right now, and we can figure something out. Um, Other thoughts I've had is particularly with my nephew, um, like character ed lessons. Right now, we're kind of working on intrinsic motivation. And these are things that I would be working on with my students, like if I were in the classroom and these were like other, past times. I pass notes to him to encourage him. Like I said, we use sign language a lot. He's affectionate, so we do I love yous from across the room. These are kind of structure, but structure in that like I know he needs motivation, just ways to like keep everything going while we're both trying to like he's working, he's in class, and I'm at work. Um, and I think more specifically, parents like this is your time. I also encourage teachers to talk to parents. Hey, your parents know a lot about your students. Have you reached out to them to ask what works well for them? When she shuts down, what do you do? Or when he wants to, when he wants to dance, like what does that mean, mom? So, and I'm reminded of a webinar I attended this past spring by Zaretta Hammond. She's the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. And the whole webinar was for parents. And one of the things that stuck with me was the idea of like building students' background knowledge at home. So, hey, and that looks like, hey, let's watch a show together and actually have dialogue about that show. I mean, from something they choose to something we mutually agree on, just whatever. But like, let's have a conversation, and that actually gives kids language. That empowers them to, like, have an opinion about something. Don't just soak it all up. If there was something that frightened you or that you disagree with, it's okay. Like, name that. And those, by them exercising those muscles verbally with you, like after hours, they're going to access those same muscles when it's time for them to think critically in the classroom. And for me, that still kind of creates like structure maybe in the brain, and that they don't, I mean, we're learning, but it doesn't always have to be like in like the Zoom call. It can be like us experiencing something and having a conversation together. But I mean, those are just a few thoughts that I had around that. But yeah, I mean, structure is major. I thrive in structure. I've said that all my life. Um, yep. So those are my thoughts on that.
Oh, I love that. And I really, it's really cute that the kid that learns best under the table. And it's so beautiful that the parents listened and didn't make the kid feel silly, what kid sits under table, if that is what works. So it is about parents being in tune, listening to your child. And I love it, Portia, having the conversation, watching a show together. Melissa, I remember you saying to me, even with your children having questions during this time, you and your husband said, okay, let's just sit down and read the Bible together. Talk to us. Don't feel like there is a question that's silly. Mommy and Daddy are not going to be mad at you. We're not going to think bad of you. Tell us what you feel. And I think that's so freeing for our young people. And that is part of structure. They need that. Our kids need a place where they, I can just speak. And I know my parents, and there are many who can relate to this. You say to your mom, you say something, oh, your kid, what are you complaining about? Or there's a roof over your head, you got food on the table. It's like, but no, I feel something. It's like somebody crying. I've seen it before where a child may get a spanking or something. They say, stop that crying. Well, I'm crying because I got a spanking. It hurt. And so, learn the value of listening to the kid and bringing them in as part of a family. I think right now our kids need a lot of affirmation. And we need to be able to validate their feelings, validate the teacher's feelings. The parents, we know you're frustrated in some ways, and we hear it. This is an adjustment for everybody. So again, relax, encourage, have structure, and then I want to talk about this last thing, and I promise you we're going to wrap it because I'm going to connect it. It's kind of like engagement and community, and we talked about it a little bit in our last segment, but I read something and it just made me just spark with the creativity and ideas. It's where, because you're getting back to a new normal, this lady came up with an idea I think is phenomenal. Only 10 girls could be invited. It was for girls. Only 10 girls could be invited. They would put a table in a backyard or on a patio or something, and all the girls would have to wear masks, but it was going to give them community. And they would engage in some type of arts and crafts, or some type of making some type of organic meal together, or creating something. And I thought, how wonderful is that? And it's 10 girls at a time, but it was so exciting to me that okay, that's a way this person is trying to give them some engagement, some community. Soon we're going to start a garden here at church, a project as a garden. Just ways that we can give our kids the community and engage them. So I want to wrap, and if any of you have some final things that you want to say about that right now, about drawing our kids into community and engagement. We do not want them to shut down. We have an older generation, I know, that are concerned. I've talked to some of the older people about coming back to church, of just the fear, but now we're getting creative. How do we draw you into engagement and community? We have FFN Drive In coming up, and we've done Family Fun Night, I don't know how many years here at this church. We've had to get real creative to have an FFN drive-in where you stay in your car, but we still have this big event. And all we say to you is, it's going to be different, but it's going to be good. So wrap with that. Community engagement. What are you going to do? What's the challenge you would give, and what are you going to do in your jobs to make that happen? Melissa did a woo.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like we said, like everything is changing, and it's so hard to like foresee. Okay, is this gonna work? Is that gonna work? You know, are the people gonna be, accepting of it, of coming out or doing this and that? You know, with the, like you said, FF Drive-In. You know, it's different. You know, so like, how are the people? You know, I think at this point, as far as engagement, everybody just needs to have that open mind. You know, like at first when church opened up, I know personally me, I was like, man, I don't feel comfortable. I was like, I'm not ready to go back, even with the mask. Like I just feel like the air outside even has COVID, and I hate to be like so dramatic, but I am like that. But when I finally did come back into service, I had to have that open mind. I was like, you know what, God, today's the day. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to walk in faith. I'm going to go to the service. I'm going to wear my mask. I'm going to still be safe, but I just want to go. And the moment that I did, it was just like a big stress off of my shoulder. And when I came here, I realized, okay, the worship is totally different being in service than at home. You know, you still get the, the at-home feel, and you still get the word of God, but it was just totally different. And I think it was something that it was just like a next step. And it's like, okay, these little baby steps that we have to take in order to get to where we're comfortable enough that we can, take a lot of the stress away that we are feeling, the feeling of the unknown, of what is going to happen, what is it's like this whole unknown thing. So I think that just being opened and open-minded, having that faith, praying a lot and ask God to, hey, give me that extra, strength, or give me that encouragement that I need to actually go and walk into that faith, not just praying it, but actually doing it.
That's good. Cynthia?
I think to encourage parents to set an example when there's opportunities at church to engage or to be part of something that CRCC is making available. I think as parents to, for example, I love it when I see whole families in Bible study. I see the mom has signed up for women's Bible study. The dad has signed up for men's, and then you have the teen signed up for youth, and then the little ones for KOR. So it's just beautiful to see like a whole family come together and be a part of the community of CRCC, and just partaking in all the events that we make available, because it is limited because of the season that we're in. So just being excited about it, because when they see that you as a parent are excited about it, they will be excited about it. If you're showing fear and then they're going to pick up on that fear and be afraid as well and not want to step out either. So I think it's just setting the tone and setting the example as leaders in your household, fathers, mothers, just setting the example for their children to participate in community, because that's what our kids desperately want. And venturing out in faith,
Definitely. Portia, you have any final words for us?
Sure. So in regards to the question about engagement and community with kids, the thought that I had that isn't very practical, but it's just something that came to mind, is just teaching empathy. And that, so when I say teaching empathy in terms of like how to engage with like what's happening with the world. A little while ago, someone mentioned like the whole debate about masks. Though like I think it's right to like talk to kids about like what does that mean? Like how can you like approach this from a place that is empathic, and so that you can learn and grow as like for yourself. So like that's what comes to mind when I think about engagement. Just like how do you show up in this space? No matter like whether you're angry or like somebody is frustrating you. I think of, that's my thought. Just thinking about like showing up with empathy and just like in a place of like calm and peace. And I would say more practically, I think like having those mini projects are really cool, and also sharing that. I've done that over COVID. I've repotted all my plants. Um, I've joined like social media groups for home plants. I'm considering a fall garden, just things like that. So when kids are able to like tap into those, like their interests, and then like there's a group for that. So encouraging them to connect like based on interest and like think outside of like their normal group, other people who may have a similar interest. I think those are really helpful ways for kids to engage.
I like that. We're going to do that, grow a plant. All our kids going to get a plant. We're going to start a garden at home. That's a good idea. Thank you, Portia. We just hope you have been blessed and encouraged. You know, I'll give you those again. Relax, encourage, structure, and then empower. As we look at engagement and community, we all need it. You know, and finally, I'll say, I remember when Pastor did the series on Habakkuk in chapter 3, and where Habakkuk gets to the end, and chapter 3, he's praising God. I mean, chapter 1, he has one perspective, has his conversation with God, walks it through. God starts telling him some of what's going to take place. In chapter 3, he's praising God. He says, I see God. And by verse 17, so he's saying, though the fig tree doesn't blossom, though this, he gets to the point, he says, I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. He makes my feet like hinds feet to walk upon my high places. We have high places to walk upon right now, but God will give us the agility, the strength, the fortitude to keep going in these times. And he's going to bring us to the other side. And he's bringing out so much in our families and our churches, in us individually, personally. So keep that in mind and be encouraged. Now, we hope that you will join us in our sanctuary for service 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. Move in faith. If you have to join virtually, you can watch via Facebook or on our YouTube channel. Also, we're just so excited. I know y'all super excited about FFN. FF Drive-In.
Yes.
Yeah, FF Drive-In. Portia, we wish you could be here for FF Drive-In. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be different, and God is doing a new thing, so we're going with it. Again, on behalf of Pastor Darrell and Christ the Rock Community Church, thank you so much for joining us for our Saturday Impact. God bless you. We'll see you next time. On behalf of Pastor Darrell and Christ the Rock Community Church, we want to thank you for joining us for Impact. We would love to know how these services are making a difference in your life, as well as here's some of the topics that you may be interested in learning more about. You can email us at info@crcconline.org. Again, that's info@crcconline.org. Why don't you join us as well for our services in the sanctuary, Sunday, 10:30 a.m. live, or you can join us via Facebook or YouTube. We hope to see you real soon as we continue to lead people into an ever-growing personal relationship with Jesus Christ.